She's an idiot. Let me take that back. She's a total idiot. What's worse is she's a very smart woman, so she had to work very, very hard to become an idiot. The woman in question is my wife, soon to become my ex-wife. Almost the standard story, cheated on me and got caught. Well, she doesn't know she got caught, but she'll find that out in the next few days. If you read stories on the internet, unfaithful spouses aren't that uncommon. Heck, in real life they aren't that uncommon. Half of all marriages end in divorce nowadays, and being unfaithful seems to come hand in hand with the rest of the problems. At least half the husbands I know try to get a little on the side, and about the same number of wives seem to want to play too. I know that for a fact, because a lot of my friends' wives have done a little flirting with me and have indicated that they weren't opposed to taking it beyond the flirting stage. Discreetly, and with respect of course, but still quite obviously offering an extramarital affair. I haven't taken any of them up on it though. For one reason, I'm still married and have some definite ideas on the importance of faithfulness in marriage. Actually, let me add to that statement. Being unfaithful has no place in a marriage. In my opinion, if you're unhappy in your marriage, you either tell your spouse you're unhappy and you both decide to work on it, or if you're not going to work on it, you get divorced and try again. Well, those are two possibilities, but there's a third, I guess. You decide you aren't cut out for marriage and you'd prefer to remain single and play the field. Still, you tell your partner before you start to date others. If you don't plan on getting married again, you don't need a divorce, but it would be polite. Your spouse might want to have one. Any way you choose, pick an option and stick with it. I personally have never seen an open marriage work. I've seen some work if you define work as staying married even though their lives are separate. Nothing that matched my definition of marriage, two people functioning and living as a team. I suppose I should introduce myself before I continue with my story. I'm Brandon Martin, but I'm 34, about 1.5 inches over 6 feet tall, weigh the same as I did in high school, 196, and I've got green eyes and red hair. I'd consider myself moderately attractive to the ladies, but nothing special. That may be changing as I get older though. I mentioned that a lot of my wife's friends have flirted with me, didn't I? It seems a lot of husbands in our circle of friends haven't taken care of themselves in the same way I have. If you work out a couple of times a week and go for a run on weekends, you tend to stay in shape. It's not a chore. Exercising has been my hobby since childhood. Between that and simple genetics, I'm still in shape and probably always will be, unless I injure myself or something. There seems to be a gender-based difference in how husbands and wives deal with self-esteem issues. While the husbands get their self-esteem from being successful in their careers and providing for their wives, the wives in our circle of friends seem to get more self-esteem out of looking good. Where the husbands focus on being successful and providing, the wives focus on their appearance to boost their self-esteem. Some also have jobs and careers they're proud of, but even they spend a lot of time maintaining their fitness and appearance. They're quite successful at it too. Okay, some of it is about preserving what they have. An older, out-of-shape guy with money has a fairly good chance of finding an attractive partner if his marriage falls apart. A woman in her 30s or 40s who gets divorced has more trouble finding a new partner, unless she's financially well off. Another reason for their efforts is the competition among women about how they look. Men tend to compete with status and success, while women compete more with their appearance. Not always the case, and there are some significant exceptions, but I think it's generally true. Anyway, most of the wives seem to look better than their husbands. The husbands all tend to be a bit out of shape. Not the extremely overweight kind of out of shape, more like an extra 20 or 30 pounds around the midsection, but even a slightly sagging midsection doesn't look good. In our circle of friends, we haven't seen any trophy husbands yet, but I think that some wives work hard to stay fit to prevent that from happening, protecting their relationship, so to speak. It does result in the wives looking better than their husbands, though. Perhaps the difference in how I look compared to my male peers is another reason why their wives tend to flirt with me and send occasional discreet messages saying they're interested. I don't act on those messages, but they still get sent. Anyway, back to my soon-to-be ex-wife. Ailish, that's an Irish name, by the way. It's pronounced Ailish with the accent on the first syllable. Was 5 years younger than I was, and I met her when she moved to Texas after graduation. I married her about 2 years later, so we've only been married for 3 years. Maybe she doesn't want to lose her comfortable lifestyle, but she's already started looking for someone to replace me. I suppose that sometimes works. The phrase "the husband is the last to know" wouldn't be a cliche if it didn't happen. It doesn't work often enough to be a certainty, though. Especially when, like my wife, the person doing the looking isn't significantly more intelligent than the one they are considering replacing. That's really the root of Eilish's problem. She thinks she's smarter and more capable than her poor, clueless husband. She somehow decided that her bachelor's degree in English literature from a prestigious school meant she was more intelligent than someone with a master's degree in engineering from a technically oriented school. I suppose her appearance played a part in that too. Eilish was a cheerleader and a prom queen in high school, a member of the popular group. Her family was wealthy as well. Those factors had more to do with her acceptance to a prestigious school than her actual academic ability. She got the advantages that came with her good looks and wealth. I didn't. I wasn't exactly popular in high school, but I was close. If my school had a successful sports team, I would have been considered second tier or lower. Without competition from popular kids because of their lower status, the fact that I was a good dancer, got good grades, and wasn't very shy allowed me to socialize somewhat equally with the popular crowd. I also helped a lot of them with their schoolwork. Not exactly tutoring, since it was more like writing papers and reports for them and helping them with their homework assignments. Not quite doing their work myself, but almost. It also earned me enough money that I didn't have to work any other job. Eilish didn't have to work hard to be successful academically either. Most teachers in high school will assume a well-dressed, articulate, and attractive person is intelligent, unless that person proves otherwise. Eilish didn't bother to prove otherwise, and managed to get through high school and university with good enough grades and an unimpressive major. On the other hand, after high school, I was a national merit scholar at one of the better engineering schools in the country. A state school, but a good one. I managed to get through undergrad and grad school with the help of part-time work, tutoring, and student loans. When I graduated, I got a job in information technology with a large company based in Dallas. The fact that I had worked as an unpaid intern during the summers and as a salaried temporary employee during subsequent summers helped me get that job. I didn't get the job because of personal connections. I got it because I was really good at what I did. Eilish became a junior assistant copywriter at an advertising agency that did business with her father after she graduated. By the way, junior assistant copywriter can be translated to gopher in simple terms. The person who gets coffee at meetings and makes copies for those who actually have real jobs. That probably explains why she wanted to quit working when we got married. To cut a long story short, 10 years after graduation, my salary was a little over $200,000 a year, and my title was Senior Design Implementation Engineer. The title is misleading and intentionally so. What I actually do is lead the department that handles our computer security and penetration tests. Pen testing, as it's commonly called, involves checking and securing computer networks from unauthorized access. These attempts could be made by hackers who are curious and want to bypass security, people who cause damage out of spite, or professionals who engage in industrial espionage. That's pretty much the same type of security needed by government agencies, but they also have the responsibility to collect evidence for future prosecutions. My department doesn't have to worry about evidence collection. Our company has decided, after unsuccessful attempts at suing those responsible for attacks, to handle it differently. Apart from making our network as impenetrable as possible, we set up strategic measures to trap intruders. These traps have to be set carefully, as they can cause real damage to the trespassers' computer systems. That's why computer security is the confidential description of my department's job. That's why I get paid a significant amount of money. Last year, I made $350,000, including bonuses for successfully handling 5 different penetration attempts. Those bonuses accounted for almost half of my compensation package. Unfortunately, these attempts have been decreasing in recent years. It seems that our company has gained a reputation for being too difficult to mess with in the eyes of those who would try to breach our security. I'm not too worried, though. Next year, my current number 2 will take over my old position, and I will be promoted to Vice President of Computer Operations. This promotion is primarily due to my efforts in helping other departments as the number of penetration attempts decreased. I have demonstrated my understanding of our company's operations, and I am the logical choice to replace the current head of Comp Ops. With this promotion, my base salary will be $500,000 a year, along with stock options and many perks like a company car, a larger office with my own secretary and personal assistant, a country club membership, and various other benefits. As I've mentioned before, I'm good at what I do. This promotion adds a certain urgency to the situation with my idiot soon-to-be ex-wife. No-fault divorce laws in this state mean that I will have to split my assets with her, and probably pay alimony since she is currently unemployed. Not a big problem now, but it would get worse after my promotion. You see, right now my base salary was $130,000 after taxes, and my bonuses had been paid to a corporation in the Cayman Islands. I owned the corporation, but because of the offshore nature of my assets and the fact that Ailish had no idea they even existed, they were not going to be considered as part of our marital assets. Sure, a real shark of a divorce lawyer might be able to find them and try to get them considered as such, but the likelihood of that happening was slim. 130 was pretty normal for a senior engineer at a computer company, and I'd never mentioned exactly what my job entailed or any bonuses. We rented our condo and leased our cars. No kids, maybe $60,000 in ordinary investments, and we both had equivalent retirement accounts. I had to fund her account because her income was non-existent, but the fact that they both contained the same amount meant that there wouldn't be a problem with her attaching part of my retirement funds. People in jobs that involve security matters tend to be a little on the cautious side. Professional paranoids might be a fitting title for my type of people. Even with the worst probable settlement, I wouldn't be on the hook for more than half the investment she could find and alimony if she managed to convince the judge to grant it. Still, my offshore corporation had assets of $6 million, and I wasn't really in the mood to split it with her. 10 years of bonuses and smart reinvestment tends to increase any amount. Plus, as it was paid offshore and stayed there, I didn't owe taxes on it until I moved it to the States. It's legal, look it up. So if I offered her a 30% of the investments she knew about, plus paying the leases on her car and the condo for a year and a living allowance of $2,000 a month, I think her attorney would jump at it, and it would only cost me 90 grand. Actually, I knew he would if she used the guy I thought she would. That would be the little guy that she'd been having her current flirtation with. You have probably encountered one of his breed of lawyers if you have ever had the misfortune to get involved in a divorce. He's the type of lawyer that would have to request that you spell the word ethics if you used it in conversation so that he could look it up. Heck, I'd even pay a reasonable amount to him to cover her legal fees if I had to. Let him think I was an idiot. Who cares? I'd get to keep my $6 million, and the divorce would be over with before I got my big raise. As soon as the divorce was final, I could discover that he'd been betraying her while he was representing her. I could sue him, get my money back, and probably get him disbarred. Okay, I'm a bit tough, and maybe I do carry a bit of a grudge, but so what? I'm entitled to a bit of retaliation. At least in my opinion. Was the cheating his idea, his or hers? Was it an affair or preparations for a divorce? And, if it was preparation, was the whole cheating and then divorce thing his idea? Who cares? He's lucky it hadn't occurred in my grandparents' day. Then, I could have gotten away with taking a bullwhip to his rear end, or just shooting the jerk. Nobody would have said a word about it except to maybe congratulate me on taking care of the removal of a public nuisance. This is Texas, after all. So $30,000 for her share of the investment she knew about, a year's car lease at $14,000, the apartment at $24,000, another $20,000 for an allowance and chump change to the jerk temporarily, round it off and call it $90,000. That would be a very generous offer. She got $90,000 and I got to keep what was left in my $6 million and get a big raise after the divorce. Sounds fair enough to me. I'm a bit of a jerk, but not a big one. $90,000 for 3 years was a good settlement if they didn't know any better. I could afford it. Besides, a mistress would have cost a bit more over that same period of time and probably wouldn't have been nearly as good. She may have been a bit of an idiot, but she was very good looking, reasonably pleasant to be around, and gave a great foot massage. So I'm not much of a romantic, so what? Accountants and businessmen aren't the only ones that are comfortable with the concept of cost-benefit analysis. Engineers do it too. Sometimes it's necessary to cut out the dead weight, and I can't think of anything that's less necessary than a cheating wife. Anyway, the problem wasn't the settlement. The problem was how to convince her to pull the trigger soon. It would go easier if she thought she was dumping me. I'd make her an attractive enough settlement offer, but not so attractive that her lawyer boyfriend would smell a rat and start searching for other assets. I just wanted her to make her move before I got my new position and salary. If she asked for the divorce, she would be trying to get me to go along with it, not the other way around. Oh, she'd probably ask for the sun and the moon as part of any settlement, but that would be just the first offer. My counter offer would be better than she or dipshit expected, and they'd grab it and run. The only problem was how to get her to start things. I suppose some of my readers think I'm being awfully cold-hearted about this. I wouldn't say that. I'm I'm just a little more of a planner than most people. I see a problem, analyze it, and solve it. That's the skill set that made me become an engineer and got me working with computers. That's how I approached this problem, and I think I'm just being realistic. I knew she was cheating on me, and I didn't see any reason to fight for something I'd already lost. You might be wondering how I knew I had already lost. Think about it. My job was dealing with people who penetrated computer networks, and I certainly knew how to go about doing it myself. I'm not an idiot. I noticed the initial cooling of our relationship when it started, and it was a logical next step to do some investigating. Let's just say I knew about everything soon after it started happening. Dipshit had a security system in his condo. I had one in mine, and the hotel rooms they frequented also had them. You fill in the blanks. Of course, officially I only knew about what was said and done in my own condo, but that was enough. Any other information I stumbled across wasn't legally obtained, and I couldn't introduce it in court. Still, I had a plan to address that deficiency. I'd only bother to fight for my marriage if there was still something there worth fighting for, and there wasn't. You did notice that I said current affair, didn't you? I think this one was number 3, but I might have missed one. The plan I came up with was to do something that would inconvenience her, and then take advantage of her objections to the inconveniences. Since we had offices all around the world, I was going to be transferred to Alaska, and she hates the cold. It was only fall, but the nights were still chilly. I could even make the transfer look legitimate. 1, the company loved me and the way I did my job, so they'd go along with anything I wanted to do. 2, it would be no real hardship for them, because I could do my job equally well from Alaska, as internet access let me teleconference with colleagues and monitor the network from anywhere. 3, it was only temporary because I could be transferred back as soon as the divorce was settled. That would mean I'd be back well before I was due to assume my new role as a vice president. Advantages to me? Well, as much as I liked Texas, I liked the idea of visiting Alaska. I liked hiking, hunting, and fishing, and I knew from buddies that had made trips there that the scenery, hunting, and fishing there were fantastic. I'd been told the nightlife in Anchorage was pretty good, too. Quite a few very nice restaurants, especially if you like seafood, and I did. Some nice clubs with live music and some nice places to dance also sounded interesting. I'd also been told about a few nice bars, but they didn't interest me much. I'm not much of a drinker. If I'm in a social situation, I might have a Campari and soda or 2, but that's about it. I've been drunk exactly once in my life and didn't enjoy the results. Hangovers weren't my idea of a good time. Alaska in general, and Anchorage specifically, sounded like a fun place to be. I'd be working some of the time, but I could also take 2 weeks of vacation first. Fly to Seattle, rent a new motorcycle, ride it to Bellingham, take the ferry to Juneau with my new bike, and then ride to Anchorage and return the same route in reverse. When I was done, sounded like a good plan. Plus, it gave me a perfect excuse to ride a motorcycle again. Ailish didn't like bikes, and like a fool, I'd let her convince me to give up riding. With any luck, this whole process would expedite the matter of her filing for a divorce. It wasn't just the cold weather she hated. Anything outdoors was definitely not on her to-do list, so she wouldn't want to move. Plus, she was thinking she was in love with the jerk and wouldn't want to give him up. He didn't have quite the same affections for her, but she didn't know that. It's surprising to most people what can be found out with the proper use of computers. Did you know a lot of hotel security systems can be remotely accessed if you know what you're doing? I'm not quite the equal of the NSA, but I don't do badly in the comparison. The time they spent in their secret meetings involved a certain amount of close conversations, and I generally knew what they planned to do almost as soon as they planned it. Plus, I heard what he said on the phone after she left. He really was quite materialistic and quite the opportunist, and he liked to brag. If it didn't work, I could up the ante, but I didn't think I would have to do so. I had my plans and I thought they would work. Only thing left to do was implement them. No time like the present. Okay, I'm exaggerating. I waited until I got to the office to put my plan in place, call it present plus 45 minutes. Then I had to start with my soon-to-be ex-wife. Hey Lish, how's my devoted wife doing today? Miss me? Way. Okay, I was being a bit sarcastic, but she didn't know that. As far as she knew, I was still clueless. You know the old joke, don't you? The punchline goes, keep them in the dark and feed them lots of nonsense. She gave me a little wave and said, "You're home early. Aren't you an ace conspirator?" She wasn't. Jerk told her to act affectionate until they were ready to make their move, with one exception. That was, don't go giving him any affection. You cut him off, understand? Hell, he wasn't much of a conspirator either. If you have a target you're trying to deceive, you don't make him uneasy. If anything, you make sure he's getting confused. Lowering his effective IQ by making sure the blood supply to the brain is going in the opposite direction is just plain good business strategy. Well, something came up at the office, and I came home to pack. There's a problem at the Alaska office, and they need someone to straighten things out for them. How would you like to come along with me? It could be a nice little vacation for you while I'm working. You could go fishing, hiking, or sightseeing while I'm in the office, and I'd see you at night. How about it? My wife doing any kind of outdoor activity. Get real, particularly involving anything in Alaska. I could tell you what was going through her mind at the thought. Igloos, sled dogs, and Eskimos, that's what. Also cold and snow, deep snow. It was just barely fall, and there wasn't any snow except on the mountaintops, but that's the way she'd imagine it to be. How long will you be, sweetie? Sweetie was a nice touch. Maybe she has at least a minimal understanding of what is required to conduct a conspiracy. Maybe she's a bit smarter than her boyfriend, although that wouldn't take much. I remember a Bugs Bunny cartoon I saw in my youth, and Bugs' comment, "What a silly person," was well-deserved in Jerk's case. Open-ended, unfortunately. That's why I think it would be a nice thing if you came along. There wouldn't have to be any awkward telephone calls where I had to break the bad news about my delayed return. I have to get up there right away, but you can close up the apartment and join me there. It would give you a chance to have one last enjoyable time with your friends and make sure your volunteer work isn't going to suffer too. She didn't think I paid any attention to what she did, but she was wrong. I asked around. The volunteer work that she and her friends did was sit in meetings planning benefit social occasions. Any money they raised for charity was only slightly more than what they spent on holding them. Add in the costs for new dresses and salon appointments, and they could have just written checks, given it directly, and been more effective at the ostensible purpose of charity. That would not have been half the fun, or gotten them mentioned in the society pages though. I don't think I could get away without some notice. We have a couple of benefits planned that I can't miss. I'm on the committee, after all. It might make me have to take a week or two to get everything together. Like that's what she'd really be doing. She'd move Jerk into the condo and be busy causing trouble. I knew he had planned for something like an opportunity like this. Judging by the quality of his planning, but she'd already succeeded in considerably lowering his effective IQ. 1 or 2 weeks would become 3 or 4, and then she'd probably try to surprise me with having me served with divorce papers. Oh, woe is me. Like B.R. Rabbit said in the fable, "Please don't throw me in the briar patch." Of course, baby. You take whatever time you need to be comfortable. I'll book a hotel room for you to stay in. I'd be worried about you being on your all alone. I'll arrange for you to have access to the condo if you need to have a meeting or something, and leave papers with the leasing agent that will make it okay. I'll miss you, but when you get there, I'll have all sorts of things to do lined up that you've never had a chance to try. We can take a canoe trip, go hiking, try skiing, all kinds of fun stuff you've never experienced. It will be a chance for us to get away together and experience nature firsthand. I know you'll love it. Actually, what I knew was the diametric opposite. She'd hate it. If this didn't motivate her to pull the trigger, nothing would okay, honey. I'll start winding up some of the things that I'm involved in right now, and then I'll see about joining you. When do you have to leave? Somehow I sincerely doubt she's intending on winding up what she's involved in. Still, she might try. Jerk needs a lot of things, like morals, integrity, ethics, and a conscience, but I don't think he needs any help winding up and becoming more twisted. Depends on how fast things come together. A few days at most, though. I might have to go through Seattle to pick up some stuff and make sure it gets to Anchorage, but that depends on other things. Yeah, it depends on whether they have the bike I want. Forget it. If they don't have the one I want, I'll buy one. There are lots of motorcycle shops in the SeaTac area. Someone will have exactly what I want. Considering I carry an Amex Platinum card, there won't be any trouble with any purchases I make. I wonder if I could get a corporate Amex Black card as one of the perks of my new position. That would make entertaining new and existing clients a very convenient experience. It would make business traveling easier too. I'm really looking forward to my new job. I'm not particularly looking forward to my divorce, but I'll be losing some unneeded and unwanted weight. About 120 pounds of lying, cheating, unfaithful wife. This will be the first time I've ever experienced a major weight loss, and I think I might enjoy that part of the experience. So here I am in Anchorage. I did buy the motorcycle instead of renting one, and it's a sweet ride. As I predicted, Jerk and Dimwit messed up by becoming romantically involved. She moved him into the condo and tried her best to cause trouble. Sorry, sweetheart, he didn't have much in the way of intelligence to begin with, so most of your effort was wasted. It's amazing how dumb my soon-to-be ex-wife was. She knew we had a security system in the condo. How long do you think it took me to access the system and download a copy into my laptop? If I had snapped my fingers after I was finished, it would have doubled the time required. Not really, it took almost 5 minutes to get what I needed. But it sounded good. People are allowed to brag a bit about how well they do their jobs, aren't they? If they aren't, they should be. I got the videos of the condo follies featuring Jerk and Dimwit while I was on the ferry heading north. I've got a satellite phone that lets me access the internet from practically anywhere in the world. Now I had evidence I could use in court. I couldn't use the evidence I got from the hotel security systems. That was illegally obtained. Not throw you in jail illegal, it just couldn't be presented as evidence. I got it because Texas was one of the few remaining states where adultery mattered when it came to property divisions and divorces. I probably wouldn't have to use it, but it pays to be prepared. I was pretty sure that Mr. Jerk and MS. Dimwit would ask for everything including my molars when they filed. It was standard procedure in any negotiation to start with a high demand. My apparent assets were about $100,000, so they'd ask for 90% of it, as well as high alimony lasting for years. I'd counter-offer with the same 90,000, but only 30 in cash, no alimony, and the rest spread over a year or so. They'd go for it like starving piranhas would go for an animal that stumbled into their stream. If they didn't, my attorney could show them the videos, with a comment that he doesn't want me to use this, but I think I can convince him to let me. If you fight our offer. That's the way engineers think. Have both a plan and a fallback plan if the first doesn't work. The part about not wanting to use this was total nonsense. The reason I wasn't going to say it myself was I was afraid I couldn't keep a straight face. While doing so, I'd probably burst out laughing. I was going to use them. They were going to be posted everywhere I could manage to get them posted. They were legally recorded in my own home, and there was even a sign posted there was electronic surveillance on site. I checked, and that meant that interlopers had no right of privacy. They were both technically interlopers, because the papers I filed with the leasing agent said I was terminating my residence, but not my lease. Since only my name was on the lease, that meant she wasn't officially a resident. That meant any videos I might make weren't of her in her own residence, and could be used by me in any manner I chose. It was going to make it easier to get him in trouble, too. Dipshit hadn't started dating her before representing her. He started representing her while he was still pursuing her romantically and hadn't yet sealed the deal. That meant that he couldn't use the exception that allowed romantic relationships with a client if it started prior to representation. Hey, I checked. It wasn't a sure thing, but my attorneys thought they could make it work. My lawyers were smarter than Dipshit was. It pays to hire the best. You know the nicest thing about Alaska? It's not the hiking, fishing, or camping, or even the scenery. Well, it is about the scenery, at least part of it. The pipeline construction is over, but there are still a lot of high-paying jobs in Alaska if you don't mind sustained periods of hard work and being away from social interaction. Oil rigs, pipeline maintenance, fishing boats, long-haul trucking, that kind of thing. Guys with these kinds of jobs hit Anchorage or one of the other cities with money in their pocket and the same adventurous attitude that you see on movie westerns when the cowboys hit town after the cattle drive. The scenery I'm talking about is the assortment of young and attractive people that come to Alaska to work in occupations where they'll meet people with money that don't mind spending some of it. I'm not talking about escorts. I'm referring to young individuals who take advantage of their youth and good looks to place themselves in proximity to people that have enough money to have fun and don't mind spending some of it with an attractive companion. Some of them are dancers, some performers, some service workers, and some are working in stores and shops. They like the fact that they meet people who have money to spend and who appreciate having company while they do so. All this means that Alaska, in the larger cities, has almost the same density of attractive individuals as do Las Vegas and Hollywood, but without the attitude. That's the source of the scenery I previously mentioned. I spent a lot of time admiring it. Just looking, mind you. I said I had some strong ideas about the importance of loyalty in relationships, didn't I? Well, I didn't think that just because my silly soon-to-be ex-wife had decided to end our relationship that I was entitled to do the same. Look but not touch was going to be my policy until I was officially divorced. It wasn't a matter of morality, it was a matter of doing what felt right. Morally, I considered that there was no reason why I should stay loyal to a relationship when my significant other had broken that loyalty. My challenge was more about doing what my conscience told me was right. My conscience required me to honor the promises that I made. In business, I always worded statements about commitments as long as that remains your policy, we have a deal. In other words, if you don't go back on the agreement at your end, we won't either. No such conditions had been attached to my promise of loyalty to my wife. I owed it to my own sense of self-respect to be faithful, at least in action, until that commitment was dissolved. It may not have been how others chose to handle this problem, but it was how I chose to live my life. We'll revisit the issue of the attractive people when I'm divorced. Well, I'm now divorced. 6 weeks, 4 days, 6 hours and 7 minutes divorced. Everything went as planned. Dumb shit decided to divorce me and replace me with her new one true love, and dipshit encouraged her. Of course, they asked for everything, and I countered with a fair share of everything they knew about. Dipshit got greedy and tried to go for more, and I had to threaten to countersue for inappropriate behavior. Unlike in many other U.S. states, in Texas, divorce settlements are often weighted heavily against unfaithful spouses. True, most often the victimized spouse is the wife, but the principle is usually applied without any gender bias. I gave her exactly what I proposed, 90 grand. In return for an uncontested divorce, I agreed to her getting the 90 grand in a lump sum settlement. I think she thought I took out a loan against my retirement. Since she filed for divorce, she was responsible for the court costs as well as her legal fees. She thought she was getting almost all of my assets, and she ended up getting less than 2% of them. As I've said, I believe in loyalty, not financial foolishness. Still, I did one other thing. I put $250,000 in a trust account for Ailish, which was to be turned over to her if she were to ever find herself divorced after she remarried. She wouldn't find out about it until that happened, because I didn't want to support her with dipshit, but I wanted to give her a safety net in case the worst happened. Call me a softie if you want. I could afford it, and I was a little sneaky at the end. Not enough to cause agonies of conscience, but enough for some mild regret for what might have been. I didn't want her to get away with taking what was rightfully mine, but I felt I owed her something. I had cared for her at one time, after all. If she didn't know about the money, dipshit couldn't get his hands on it. I figured I owed her a bit of kindness and consideration, but he was an entirely different matter. The day after the divorce was finalized, guess what happened? Gee, surprise, surprise. I got transferred back to Austin and offered a vice presidency. $500,000 a year salary, stock options, a company car, a Mercedes-AMG GT, if you're interested. You know what they say, the difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. The deluxe health and life insurance package, a country club membership, guaranteed 4 weeks of vacation every year, my own office on the executive floor, a private secretary, an executive assistant, and a personal assistant. Of course, Mr. Dip and MS. Dumb tried to get the settlement revised in light of my new salary, but dipshit was just as bad an attorney as I thought he was. He never noticed that there was a clause in the settlement proposal that prevented any change in terms based on income changes after settlement. Dipshit was mad at me, but dumb shit was mad at him. He was the lawyer, and he was supposed to know what he was doing. She should have known he wasn't very smart. He got involved with a married and not very bright woman, didn't he? After that attempt failed, somehow the fact that he had a romantic relationship with her while he was representing her came out. The security footage from the condo was time-stamped, and totally by accident, the senior partners in his law firm got copies. I wonder how that happened. Anyway, he got fired, the bar association got notified, and he got disbarred. It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Guess what I did? I bought a house in Anchorage. Well, just outside of Anchorage, 6 bedrooms, 2 with private bathrooms, 2 additional bathrooms, a large living room, big fireplace, and a deck out back with a built-in barbecue and a hot tub, and a 3-car garage on 12 acres that are mostly wooded. It has a little lake on it, fed by a small creek. The place is big enough to entertain guests, but not so big as to be more than one housekeeper can maintain if she has help from a cleaning crew that comes by weekly. My housekeeper? That's Lisa, a pretty 21-year-old redhead that came up to vacation in Alaska last summer. One of the attractive individuals I spoke about earlier. That's why I got the house with the 3-car garage. One space is temporarily for my car, one for her truck, and one to be shared by our motorcycles. The reason the car is a temporary visitor is that I'm buying a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon for Alaska and relocating the car to Austin. Ice and snow can be challenging in a sports car. I bought my fiancé a Harley fat boy like mine as an engagement present. You see, I live in Alaska now. I work from home most of the time and make the occasional trip to Austin for 1 week out of every 4, where I've got a company-provided condo. My personal assistant lives in Alaska, like I do, but the rest of my staff work out of Austin. No, my housekeeper, Lisa, is not my PA. My PA is my housekeeper's sister, Ashley. Twin sister, actually. You know that old joke about hot and cold running blondes as opposed to just hot and cold running water? I've got hot and hotter running redheads at my place. They actually flipped a coin to decide which one was going to be my housekeeper and which would be the PA. As far as they're concerned, it doesn't matter which one gets which job. I was going to marry one of them, though. Another decision that was made by a coin toss. Ashley won, if you're interested. Do I think that part of Lisa's and Ashley's attraction to me was because of my wealth? Probably. Did I think it was solely because of my wealth? No. Why was I still willing to risk getting married? The prenup that both had agreed to sign had a lot to do with it. After all, I didn't have another $6 million saved somewhere secretive. As I mentioned earlier, I think that being unfaithful is wrong, and I believe in loyalty, not financial foolishness. Why was I willing to risk another marriage failing? Weren't you paying attention when I mentioned the attractive redheads? Excuse me, I think I hear a couple of high-pitched voices calling me from the direction of our hot tub. It's kind of like Pavlov's experiment with dogs and the sound of a bell.